Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video I'm going to show you how I built my own nosings from the hardwood flooring boards that I bought to match the rest of the house. I also bought unfinished stair treads and I finished them to match the rest of the flooring. I had to cut them to make sure the width and depth are right, meet the overhang code. I also finished the railing to match the color of the stair treads and the rest of the flooring of the house. I still have to install the metal pickets that I purchased. In the description below, I also have links to videos I created when I was installing the hardwood flooring in this home. It was originally carpeted. I got rid of all the carpet. The hardwood flooring I purchased pre-finished, but there's not a whole lot of options in pre-finished stair treads. I did finish them myself.
But this video is all about the nosings. I chose the simplest nosing for this video, which does not include irregular angles such as on the
a little bit annoying but beautiful triangular landing area steps. I did 2 flights of stairs like this at my mom's newly built townhouse.
I'm including the rest of the stair project in separate videos, including work on the stair treads and triangular landings. Please consider subscribing to stay tuned for those DIY videos and more from me. Let's get to the first nosing. I started with ripping a pre-finished hardwood flooring board to cut off the tongue side. The groove side will fit onto the tongue of the last row I already installed on the landings. I finally realized that I forgot my feather board, so my cut wasn't perfectly clean. I purchased a 1x4 unfinished red oak board to cut 1 by 3/4 inch strips from it for the bullnose to match the face thickness of the nosing to that of the stair treads. I made sure to install the feather board for the next cut, which was the bullnose strip. The feather board made a big difference in making my cuts nice and clean.
So I'm going to go in like this. Groove is here.
The flooring board I was dry fitting here was actually cut for the next landing area, and since it was a shorter piece, it helped me determine the depth of the nosing for this particular landing. The thickness of the bullnose strip I cut is 1 inch. The thickness of the flooring board is 3/4 of an inch. When these are glued together, their total face thickness is 1 3/4 of an inch, which matches the face thickness of my stair treads. The depth of the bullnose strip is related to the overhang of the nosing. The overhang requirement is 3/4 of an inch to 1 1/4 of an inch, so I aimed for 1 inch and it turned out to be slightly less at one end of the nosing than the other, but within code throughout.
I'm not sure if this is going to get covered, so I'm going to cut some off here and then cut this to size.
Some stair specialists prefer to start the installation of flooring on a landing area with the nosing and continue installing consecutive rows on the landing after the nosing is in place. Starting with the nosing means that not many flooring rows would be nailed down using the flooring nailer because the wall or the next step would be in the way of the nailer. Another option is to glue down all the flooring boards on the landing. But for this townhouse, I decided to limit gluing, so I started the installation in the opposite side of the landing with the flooring board tongue facing out and towards the nosing. This way, the nosing's groove will be secured by the tongue of the previous nailed-down board. In another video linked below, I explain how I ensured that I installed the flooring board so that all the rows are positioned at the right distance from the edge of the landing. I transcribed the base dimensions of this structural stair component onto the flooring board using a red Sharpie, which I can easily see when I'm making my jigsaw cuts. I carefully ripped the flooring board to get rid of the tongue and create a straight and vertical edge. After ripping off the tongue, I noticed that a little bit of the groove that is manufactured adjacent to the tongue was still remaining, so I ripped off 1 or 2 additional millimeters. Any minor cut imperfections would be sanded off after gluing the two boards together.
Now I've marked the spots on each end where my bull nose is gonna go. These little edges are going over the 2 stair stringers, and this is going in between the stair stringers.
I was out of clamps for this piece.
I'm actually gonna use 18 gauge brad nails. I do have to flip this over.
I used a good wood glue to glue the bullnose strip to the underside of the flooring board. Wood glue must be applied generously and spread out evenly to prevent air pockets between the boards being glued together. I used clamps for most of my nosings, but ran out of clamps for this piece and switched to my brad nailer to keep the two boards together while the glue was curing. I used 1-inch 18-gauge brad nails for this, and I set my brad nailer to sink the nails at the maximum depth since they were going through a hardwood thickness of 1 inch.
Making sure that it's staying nice and flush. Oh no, too close. Good thing my thumb wasn't there. Something came out. I had the wrong angle on the gun there. Oh well. I'll fix that. It's better to risk it shifting than having a hole in your thumb. I was holding the gun slightly at an angle.
As you can see, one of the brad nails came out through the face of the nosing, so I'm gonna have to fix that after the glue cures. In case this isn't obvious, I was struggling removing this 1-inch brad nail to fix my nailing mistake. I'd like to hear from you if you have any suggestions on how to go about doing this with minimal damage to the wood. All comments are more than welcome. Please drop a comment down below so we can learn from each other. I appreciate you all. I finally snapped it off with my pliers and then sank it into a dent to patch it up later.
Okay, so I'm just gonna add some sawdust here and some glue. It's just a little bit of plastic surgery going on, that's all. Waiting for sanding with the 80. So all I did was glue this piece onto this so far, and I also patched up a nail hole. The nail came out here. It feels rock solid now that it's cured, so I'm just gonna go ahead and sand that with the 80 grit.
I started sanding the bullnose edge of the nosing with 80 grit sandpaper to get rid of any excess glue, table saw cut imperfections, and to bring the two surfaces, or the bullnose strip and the edge of the flooring board, flush with each other. By sanding the top and bottom edges of the face of the bullnose, I matched the roundness of the edges to that of the stair treads.
Okay, so here I have my 4 nosing pieces. I finished sanding them with the 80 grit and rounding off this edge here. Those are the only edges that are exposed after installation. The next step is to fill in any gaps with some wood filler.
This is where the nail came out and the damage got patched with sawdust mixed with wood glue. It dried a little darker, but after staining and clear coating, this spot will not be visible. I used wood filler formulated for bare or unfinished wood to fill in any tiny gaps left behind between the bullnose strip and the flooring board I used to make the nosing piece. The excess filler will get sanded off with the 120 grit sandpaper I will be using after this. This section is where the brad nail holes are. They're not exactly visible after installation, but it doesn't hurt to fill them in either way.
This wood filler has powder sawdust in it. Also, it stains really well. Not much darker than the wood itself, so it kind of feels like it's part of the wood.
After the wood filler dried, I sanded the bullnose with 120 grit sandpaper, followed by 180 grit sandpaper. I sanded the top edge of the nosing in even strokes from left to right to avoid any waves and to match the roundness of the bullnose of the stair treads. I run my finger along the edge to make sure it's free of waves, it's nice and smooth, and that it feels similar to the bullnose of the stair treads.
So this is the 120 grit sandpaper, and I can already feel the difference between the 120 and the that I haven't done on this side yet. You can feel that it's much more smooth. The scratches that the 60 grit left, I can see that they're almost gone. So I'm just gonna do a couple more minutes with the 120 before moving on to the 180. My nail came out when I was nailing this piece to this piece through here, and it came out of here, so I ended up creating a big hole here to get the nail sunk in and I patched it up. Right now it just kind of looks like a natural wood knot, and once it's stained, it's gonna look even better.
After sanding the bullnose edge with 80 followed by 120 followed by 180 grit sandpaper, to prepare for staining, I vacuumed and wiped off the sawdust. I positioned the nosing and raised the bullnose so that the freshly stained areas do not make contact with the table surface. I mixed the stain myself using 3 different stain colors and even a drop of green dye that a local hardware store happily provided me with for free, since they do not sell dye but use it to tint their paint. This drop of tint got my stain pretty close to the tint the pre-finished hardwood flooring my mom chose for her house. I tried using a cloth to apply the stain, but it was spreading a little too thin and light, so I switched to using a brush to apply the stain and then wipe it off with a cloth after allowing it to absorb for at least 30 seconds, but no longer than a minute, or it would start drying by then. I used lint-free cotton cloths that I cut out from old clothing to wipe off the excess stain. After wiping the first coat of stain off, I can see it's turning out on the light side, so I let this coat dry before applying a second coat of stain the next day. I could try not pressing as much on the cloth when wiping and leave a thicker coat of stain on, but that's tricky as it may cause some streaks. The edges of the nosing are tricky as the stain wipes off more along the edge, so I tried wiping more gently, especially along the top front edge along the length of the nosing. I ensured to apply a little stain along both ends of the nosing so that no light-colored bare wood is visible next to the pre-finished surface on top of the nosing.
Definitely needs a second coat. I completely forgot to precondition the wood. I'm noticing some patches here, darker spots. I was just thinking why this is happening, and I realized I forgot to precondition the wood with at least my paint thinner or mineral spirits that I normally precondition with. Obviously there's special wood conditioners in the market as well, but I normally just use mineral spirits.
I wore a solvent respirator while working with oil-based stains and mineral spirits. I started noticing blotches and unevenness in stain absorption, which reminded me to precondition the wood with mineral spirits for the remaining nosings. Stain applies much easier and absorbs so much more evenly when the wood is moistened with mineral spirits just before staining.
Wood is just so beautiful. I love of staining it and seeing how it enhances the wood grain. It's just really satisfying. Much better than the first two. It's so much more even. There's no blotches, no noticeable sander marks. Amazing. I'm so impressed with the preconditioning. These two here were not preconditioned, and there's like sand marks. You can probably see it better in person. And then look at this one it's been preconditioned. This one here, it's just so even.
To precondition the bare wood bullnose, I applied a generous amount of mineral spirits with a lint-free cotton cloth, immediately followed by brushing on the oil-based stain before the mineral spirits had a chance to evaporate. When applying the stain, it doesn't matter what direction you brush it in, back and forth, left to right, with and against the wood grain, it doesn't really matter, you just gotta get into all the natural wood grain levels or microscopic gaps. There are also some brad nail holes which I had patched up with wood filler to get the stain into.
Okay, so the first coat is dry, and I'm just gonna do a second coat because this part is a little bit too light compared to the original finish. So I'm gonna try to make this a little bit darker by applying a second coat. Just gonna give these a quick wipe to get any dust particles off.
I also don't want to use the same cloth that I used to wipe the stain off the first time, because it's also gotten hard and it's gonna wipe too much off. Probably a better way to set this up so it doesn't keep pulling, but as you know, I'm not a professional.
The second coat of stain is now dry. This is the day after I did the coat, and it looks great. This is the last shred I have, and these are my last 4 nosings. The color matches pretty well. I'm pretty happy with it. This one is gonna become a little bit warmer after the 5 or so clear coats that I put on it, because I am using an oil-based polyurethane which has an ambering effect. So that ambering effect, believe it or not, brings it all the way to this color from here. So this thread here was pretty much the same as this one before the clear coats. This is the one with the clear coats, and this is the one without.
The next step was to apply 4 to 6 coats of oil-based polyurethane. For the first 3 coats, I used warm satin poly, but the sheen of the satin poly is glossier than the sheen of the pre-finished hardwood flooring boards for me to match. For the last couple of coats, I added a small fraction of matte poly to the satin poly, mixed them carefully by stirring slowly with a wooden stick to avoid introducing air bubbles, and that helped me match the sheen of the pre-finished floors in the house. Since this poly is a warm satin, it has an ambering effect. This actually worked out in my favor in this case because my stain was on the cold gray side compared to the pre-finished flooring I was aiming to match. So keep in mind that your poly could also change your stain color if you're using the warm poly with an ambering effect. I do really like this oil-based poly for its durability compared to water-based or pre-tinted poly products. And you need a high durability poly when it comes to stairs and nosings, as some products may end up rubbing off the edges where most of the foot traffic makes contact with the finish.
So just doing a feather stroke underneath to make sure there's no drips there.
After first applying a generous amount of poly, I spread it evenly in a thin layer along the full length of the nosing, paying attention to any missed spots and drips. To avoid drips, I used the feather stroke to remove any potential for drips by wiping lightly and slowly with the brush after removing excess poly from the brush itself. In the case of nosings, since the face as well as both edges of the bullnose need to be clear coated, it is hard to position the nosing piece horizontally while the poly is drying. Polyurethane tends to form waves while drying on surfaces which are not horizontal. To avoid such waves on angled surfaces, each coat of poly must be super thin. To apply the polyurethane, I tried various applicators including natural and synthetic bristle brushes and foam brushes, and in the end what worked for me best was taking a lint-free cotton cloth from old clothing, similar to what I used for wiping stain off, and wrapping any brush with the cotton cloth, securing it onto the brush and using that to spread the poly. I found that this way the poly goes on nice and thin and even, without leaving any bubbles behind. I'm gonna show this method in a few minutes for my last coats of poly on these nosings.
This is looking great. I don't see any drips. I don't see any missed spots when I look from this side. So looking against the reflection of the light like that to look for any imperfections. The transition between my finish and the manufacturer's finish. So this is the brush wrapped in an old lint-free cotton t-shirt fabric. I just used some wire to keep it all intact. I mixed a small amount of matte polyurethane with a larger amount of satin polyurethane in here.
My matte polyurethane was several years old and it got lumpy over the years, so I strained it through a thin cloth. Unfortunately, it got a lot of bubbles while straining, but I decided to go ahead and apply this mixture of matte and satin poly and see if the bubbles disappear during application. In the end, I decided to also clear coat the pre-finished top surface of the flooring board portion of the nosing because I didn't really like the transition between my finish and the manufacturer's pre-finished surface. After allowing each coat to dry for 8 to 24 hours, each coat of poly as well as the pre-finished portion of the nosing had to be lightly sanded by hand with 220 grit sandpaper to ensure that the next coat of poly has something to grab onto. I was working in the garage and the temperatures outside were pretty cold, so my polyurethane coats were taking a little longer to dry. I was happy with how well this application method worked out, where I used my cotton cloth wrapped brush to apply the oil-based polyurethane. Also, the bubbles in my matte satin poly mixture were disappearing as I was applying this thin coat. It's best to wear goggles to protect your eyes from any polyurethane splashes, but I had a hard time checking for missed spots and drips with my goggles on and kept my eyes as far back as possible instead.
do a dry fit here now. The trim there is in the way. Just gonna trim that down.
I'm really happy with how well the finished product, the nosing, matches the pre-finished flooring on the rest of the landing and the rest of the house.
Very close match in color, shade, and sheen as well. Not too glossy, not too matte.
The next step was to install the nosings. Again, I'm only including the simplest nosing of the stair project, which does not include irregular angles on the triangular steps. First, I had to adjust the height of the quarter round trim previously installed here. I used my multi-tool for that and positioned it over a scrap piece of flooring board to ensure the height of the blade was at the right level. In the description below, I'm linking all materials and tools I used for this project, as well as links to videos related to the nosings on the triangular steps.
The same size trim. Continue over here and then caulking around there. And here I might be able to use caulk instead of using like another trim here. Less trim the better. It makes the area look wider. There's also going to be trim over here, but this trim here is just the doorstop trim, which is very narrow. I think it's only 3/8 of an inch.
To install the nosing, I used PL Premium Glue in generous amounts to account for any dips in the OSB subfloor on this landing. There was another oak nosing there previously, but it did not match the thickness of the flooring boards which I installed on the landing and the rest of the house. So I had to rip it out, and I took chunks of the OSB subfloor along with it as it came off. I'm including that part and the rest of the stair project in other videos on my channel, so please stay tuned for those.
This row is nailed in, so I'm gluing the nosing to this row as well. And I'm being very generous with the glue because there's a lot of dips and imperfections and dents and some layers missing off of this OSB board that's underneath that I'm gluing the nosing to. So just I'm filling in the dips here, the dips and drops. So it looks like overkill, but it's for a reason. I'm also gonna apply some to this, to the nosing itself. Okay, so I didn't add that much glue to the nosing. Tight fit. perfect. Exactly the same seam as between the rows themselves.
The last step of the nosing installation was to place heavy weights, especially over the edge of the nosing. I positioned the weight over a board to help distribute the weight more evenly. I used a bag of heavy tile grout material and a much heavier than it looks cat litter box granules. The total weight must have been somewhere around 60 pounds. I left the weights on while the glue cured for 48 hours as I had a thick layer of PL glue under there. The last and final step was to apply caulking along the ends of the nosing to close the gaps. Again, I preferred this over using trim here since I worked hard to get the length of the nosing so close to the width of the landing. And all done!
This is not what I do for a living. I do enjoy working with my hands. I am a mom of 4 kids. I have an unrelated career.
Thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to keep in touch or be informed of other home improvement DIY videos I share. I love to hear from my viewers. All questions and suggestions are more than welcome in the comments below. I really appreciate you all. Until next time.